So I'm here at the Outpouring in Claremont. It's a really cool coffee shop, and it's kind of loud, so I don't know how much you guys are going to be able to hear me. Hopefully, it's not too loud that you guys are going to, you guys can still hear what I'm saying. One of the things that I wanted to really bring up, and at least just start people thinking about, I guess, is why talking about things like politics is so difficult for so many people. And I know that we see on social media, people getting outrageous and just sort of these sort of extreme positions and what have you. But what I find is when I speak with people on a face-to-face basis, most people are, I think, pretty reasonable in their positions, in what they're thinking, so on and so forth. And of course, there are going to be disagreements, but even in those disagreements, the disagreements are not anything crazy and they're not really held to some standard that's untenable. That's completely unreasonable. Usually I can kind of understand where someone is coming from, even if I disagree with them. And a lot of it has to do with maybe where they come from, their background, maybe the knowledge that they have, or the lack of knowledge that maybe I have. But these dialogues typically are really insightful because it gets people thinking about ideas. It gets people discussing different positions, different perceptions of the world, of our community, and stuff like that. So it's really disheartening when I see so many people concerned about wanting to not have a conversation about politics. I know it can sometimes be very divisive, but I think it's one of those topics that you kind of have to go in with the idea that there's a possibility that your position is not fully fleshed out, and that there may be some challenges with that position. And going into that kind of conversation, assuming that you're right and anyone else's ideas are not accurate or incorrect, is probably a flawed way to kind of go into that conversation. And it's not to say that you can't stick to your guns if you have a particular position on something, but it's also important that that we hear ideas from others. They may have something new to share. I know that I myself have had different political positions throughout my life, and over time, when I get new information or I just learn about something that I didn't know about before, all of a sudden, my political position slightly adjusts with the new information that I didn't have before that now I have. So I really want to try to find an opportunity to encourage everyone to have a bigger picture discussion about politics. And the reason why that is because politics plays such an influential role in our day-to-day lives. It is probably one of the most influential elements that impacts our society today. I mean, you see, depending on the president that's going to be elected, where they anticipate the economy is going to go. Obviously, those are big picture things, but even on a much more local level, when you're looking to, elect a congressperson or a city, or rather county commissioner or city council, right? Those people all have influence over what your communities are going to look like. They decide on the way the builders are going to build, what the homes have to look like, how many streetlights have to exist on the street, stuff like that. Whether or not there needs to be sidewalks on both sides of the street or one side of the street. Those are decisions that your local officials ultimately decide, and that shapes what your neighborhoods look like and what the community at large looks like. So it's important to have these conversations because everyone's ideas are valid. Now, I think the thing that I think a lot of people get frustrated with is they think that because their idea was not utilized, that somehow that's a shun on their idea, or people think that that idea is not a good one. For me, I don't think that it's a question of good or bad ideas. I think it's really a question of what's most appropriate and what does the community at large want. So, when you're looking at identifying different elements that are important to a community, while you want to appease everyone, like, you want to make sure that everyone is happy. Unfortunately, many decisions have to be made where you're going to have to make a decision that someone's going to oppose, that someone's not going to be happy with for one reason or another. And when you're a city official or a county official or a congressperson or whatever, you kind of have to make a decision and know that some people are not going to be happy with that decision. But the goal is if you're good at what you're doing and you're really trying to pay attention to what the majority of the people in your community want, you're making a decision based on what the majority of the community is wanting, where you're reaching out to the community and actually trying to understand, hey, what does the community want? And if, let's use a hypothetical. If you had 100 people in your community and you had to make a decision between a sidewalk on one side of the community or 2 sidewalks on either side of the community, and you needed the community to give you some feedback on that, well, unfortunately, you kind of have to look at what the community wants and how that's going to impact the community. If there's no real negative impact in the community having 1 or 2 sidewalks other than, let's say, cost, then the majority of the community saying that they want 2 sidewalks versus 1, you're probably going to go with 2 sidewalks. Now, other things to take into consideration is cost. So let's say the majority of the community wants 2 sidewalks, but there's not money in the budget for 2 sidewalks. Then unfortunately, you're going to have to defer that second sidewalk to some future date, which may upset the people who want 2 sidewalks. So there's a lot of different smaller elements that come into play when it comes to making decisions, for city council or county commission or whatever the case may be. But having those discussions and having those ideas discussed, I think is really critical. It's really important for us as a community, as a civilization, as a society, to have these conversations and really dig deep. Most topics are not black and white. They typically have, gray areas or, color or however you want to phrase it, right? There's nuance to a lot of the decisions that have to be made. And these discussions will help kind of flush out some of that nuance so that everybody kind of understands why a particular decision needs to be made, or, you can influence as a community member how that decision is going to be made, what decision is going to ultimately be made. So my take on this whole, politics, is not a thing to talk about. People don't want to talk about politics. I think is detrimental to our society. I think it's important for people to have open and honest discussions as it relates to politics, what their ideas are, and in a way that's civil, in a way that no one's attacking anyone else. It's just a conversation discussing ideas. So I really hope and encourage everyone to be willing to have a conversation about some political element, and part of it is going to be to kind of push what your own beliefs are, and also to challenge some of the beliefs of people that And listen, there's always going to be people who are going to not change their mind regardless of what you tell them, and that's fine. Those kinds of people. There's nothing you can do about those folks anyways. But what's nice is that by introducing a new idea, you plant a seed, and it gets them thinking about that thing over time. And maybe at some future time, after they've had time to think about it, maybe others have also brought up those ideas to them as well, they may be willing to make some slight adjustment. And that's all going to be positive. That's all going to be helpful. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of come on here and just talk about the importance of having a civil conversation about politics, and making sure that it's at least for me, I feel that it's really important for us to discuss these things with our peers, with the people that we talk to on a regular basis, without any fear of what that's going to mean, like how that's going to be, how you might be demonized or something like that. These things are dangerous. Like the less that we talk about it, the less that the people talk about our politics, the more politicians are able to control what is going to happen. And that's what we don't want. You don't want politicians having so much power to be able to make these decisions that don't agree with what the people want. The whole goal of having a democracy in the first place is that the people ultimately decide what happens, and they influence the politicians to make decisions on their behalf. So I would encourage everyone to have a really heartfelt, conversation about your personal beliefs, your personal politics, even if it's just to learn more about the other person, and also to really engage with people about everyone's ideas. So that's it. I just wanted to kind of share that with you. I hope that I'm hoping that I can make some kind of influence on our community to be able to do some more of that. I think it's important, and I hope that you guys feel the same way. Anyways, my name is Gustavo David Ortiz. One of the reasons why I've kind of started this whole process is because I am myself running for Mineola City Council, seat number 2, and I'm hoping that I can make some kind of some kind of a change or an influence in my community, some impact in my community, and maybe even influence the local politics here in Mineola, and maybe that works its way up the chain. So we'll see how that plays out. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to, or just want to learn more about my campaign, feel free to go to my website, which is GustavoDavidOrtiz.com. Real easy, just my name, GustavoDavidOrtiz.com, and or just reach out to me. I'm happy to just have a conversation and just learn about what it is that you're thinking, and just hear more ideas. All right, I appreciate your time. I'll talk to you next time. Peace.